Right, well, as if we needed confirmation of this, but it is nice to get confirmation. A former Disney executive has come out and explained that Hollywood collapsing in on itself and sort of how it's come to be, and is now blaming DEI initiatives and ESG as well. It's not a huge surprise, not a huge stretch, but it is nice to have confirmation from individuals who are in the industry, or were at least in the industry, to admit that, you know, some self-awareness involved in the industry that they have completely destroyed. Because, I mean, we all know this. We talk about this. Common sense dictates that DEI is not a meritocracy. It's quota. Therefore, you're never going to get the best of the best. You just won't. So we know this. Like, it's just normal. It's just a normal outlook to have. Common sense approach to life in general. And sort of an analysis of the situation and go, yeah, this is clearly going to lead to industries falling apart, and also disenfranchising them, you know, the majority of your viewership. So let's take a look, right? This article's linked down below, but it says former Walt Disney television executive Monica Harris recently explained why Hollywood is collapsing and put the blame squarely on DEI initiatives. So she began by pointing to Target, quote, "I think the reason we see no course correction is the same reason we see target market items. And I think we know which items I'm talking about that clearly don't appeal to consumers. I think when you have like trans Cheerios and stuff, like, you're making a statement that has nothing to do with your audience and its taste." And I've said this a few times, actually. I've gone on record many times and said, is this for profit as a business, or is this for ideological reasons? Because if it's for profit, you need to explain the logic. Like, where does the board make the logical leap that, like Warhammer, for instance, where does the board make the logical leap that randomly including women as adeptus, you know, custodies, would make more profit? It just won't. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? That's just ideological grounds. Whether you agree or disagree with, you know, them doing it, it's purely just ideological grounds. It's not for profit. Where's the percentile difference that it would make? Like, it's not. And the risk factors involved in doing those things as well are quite high, because you risk disenfranchising your core audience. So anyway, Harris would continue and says, what we've seen in the corporate world, and I'm going somewhere with this, what we've seen in the corporate world is this fastidious and slavish adherence to ESG, which is environmental social governance principles, which are really just DEI in practice, in products and in hiring in the corporate world. Yeah, I mean, ESG was just the new thing that they created. Essentially, DEI, same thing, basically. So anyway, she continued further and says, so these corporations are pursuing these marketing tactics and sales tactics with products that are doomed to flop, and do flop. Again, just like movies and TV, and that lower shareholder value, but they continue them nonetheless. And the deeper I've been digging, and especially my work at FAIR, so this is the FAIR, which is Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, which I'll talk about later, but the deeper I've been digging, I've noticed this is happening because the same core group of companies are largely funding or have shareholder stakes, majority shareholder stakes, in Fortune 500 companies and in the S&P 500. We're talking about BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Everything we've said here on the channel. Again, it's just nice to have a Disney executive, former, come out and confirm this. When those three companies and their subsidiaries dominate boards of directors and dominate the ownership of stock, then they literally are in the position to tell these companies to adhere to whatever guidelines they'd like. So if DEI is an initiative that these majority shareholders would like companies to pursue, that's what they'll pursue. Because if not, then they'll face the wrath of the people who can yank the money, yank the loans, yank the funding, because it's all about money. But it's money at the behest of actual money. So at the end of the day, you're in, if you're a CEO, you're like, do I piss off my consumer base and maybe hope I can massage them, or do I piss off the people who are actually funding me? And they're between a rock and a hard place. But the consumer base does fund you. So she then stated, and I think very much the same is true in Hollywood. DEI has swept through that place. The Academy Awards, the nominations are only available to films that hit certain quotas, right? you have to have a certain number of people who are black or BIPOC, trans, non-binary, whatever. It's totally the antithesis of what artistic work is about. But then you have to do this because I think Netflix was an example. If they don't adhere to these guidelines, those loans, that funding is going to be yanked. So again, they are between a rock and a hard place. That's the untold story, in my opinion. It's not untold though, we say it all the time. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, said during a New York Times Deal Book conference back in 2017, quote, well, behaviours are going to have to change. And this is one thing that we're asking companies. You have to force behaviours. And at BlackRock, we're forcing behaviours. 54% of the incoming class are women. We added 4 more points in terms of diverse employment this year. And what we're doing internally is if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted. You have to force behaviours. And if you don't force behaviours, whether it's gender or race, or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. And that's not just recruiting, it's development, as Ken said. And ultimately, it's still going to take time, but I am just as much shocked as Ken is that we have not seen more opportunities and we're going to have to force change. This individual as well, Larry Fink, also comes out and says like a yearly thing that he wants like the world to begin to change on as well. Like he's really nefarious, this guy. Again, yeah, late 2022, stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism is you are responding to the needs of your stakeholders and you're doing it for the beneficial interest of your shareholders. Let's be clear, the shareholders are the primary stakeholder, but to achieve the long-term interests of your shareholders, and that's what I'm focused on, not any short-term thing, but the long-term thing, to create the durable profitability, you have to be focused on your stakeholders, your clients, your employees. You're right, there's a lot of noise and it really does fill the airwaves, and it fills up the times on the airwaves about the attacks from some states to me specifically and to the firm. The reality is the majority, the unheard, unspoken majority, really like what we're doing. No, we don't. What we are saying. No, we don't. I'm not happy with the narrative because it fills the airwaves and we have to spend a lot of time. To be clear, I spend a lot of time in Washington and states. I'm trying to correct the narrative because in most cases the narrative is not based on facts. It's based on somebody else's view on the facts. Mate, it's pretty apparent what you're trying to do. Like, that's obvious to anyone with half a brain. You know, you're trying to bend social sort of social narratives to your whim and force changes. It's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. DEI ESG destroys all creativity and it destroys companies. We've seen it time and time again. You know, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Former Disney executive, eh? Slamming Hollywood for DEI and ESG. What do you guys think? Drop it down below.